I didn't know this was an industry. I didn't know that people made a lot of money writing TV. That like I didn't know anything about it.
Dave Bolger here, and welcome to Had I Known, an exploration of the Hamilton College experience. This week's guest is Emmy Award winner Paul Lieberstein. Well, for some of us, the summer is coming to a close. Labor Day is lingering. For Hamilton students, summer's well over. They're back in school, back on campus, and I wish them all the best of luck. I hope they have some semblance of a normal college experience. And good luck to last week's guest, Professor Phil Klinkner. Did anybody do homework after listening to last week's conversation? Anyone listen to any of those films Phil talked about for his political film class? Lots of interesting stuff in there, and was delighted to be able to talk to Professor Klinkner. And I got to tell you, I continue to be thankful and realize how lucky I am to be doing this and on a weekly basis get a chance to talk to just some really interesting people with fascinating stories. And it just doesn't stop. This week with Paul Lieberstein is certainly an example of that. And then in the weeks to come, man, we get some more great ones coming. Just got to record a great conversation with Jess Klein, class of 1995, singer-songwriter. Had a lot of fun talking to her. Interesting story there. And then a really special one coming up that I'm editing now. I had an opportunity to join what I understand is a recurring Zoom meeting, somewhat of a reunion, with members of the class of 1956. These guys are getting together on a semi-regular basis as a lead-in to what will be their 65th reunion come next summer. Hopefully they'll be able to do that in person. But if not, they're getting quite good at Zoom and reconnecting with each other. And not just telling old stories and having a laugh, thinking back to the good old days, but in fact, they've been getting together and talking about real issues like Black Lives Matter and what's going on in the world now, and really trying to educate themselves about white privilege and trying to understand what more they can do for their own individual communities as well as the Hamilton community. And in the process of doing that, discovered this show, and I was lucky enough to be invited to join one of their Zoom sessions and record it for an episode of the show. Really powerful stuff. Incredible to talk to these men with tremendous wisdom. And so many years later, still trying to learn, trying to better themselves, and make a difference in the community. And it was inspiring, and I can't wait to share that with you. And the fact that I get some of these great guests is a testament to you all, the listeners, who either reach out to me with suggestions on who I should talk to, or encourage people to reach out and volunteer to be guests on the show. So to those of you who have reached out, thank you. If any of you haven't yet and have thoughts on who to talk to, please do so. hadiknownshow@gmail.com. Again, hadiknownshow@gmail.com. Or Had I Known Show across social media. I love hearing from listeners, so please keep the messages coming. And if you want to listen to last week's episode with Professor Phil Klinkner or any previous episode, go to hadiknown.buzzsprout.com. Again, hadiknown.buzzsprout.com. And speaking of Buzzsprout, if you've been thinking about starting your own podcast, if you've got an idea that you want to share with the world, Buzzsprout is the partner to help make it happen. It's what I use to get this show started, and I'm telling you right now, it couldn't have been easier. Just start with some gear you already have, find a quiet place, and get going. And if you want to upgrade, Buzzsprout has tons of guides to help you find the right equipment at the right price. They're going to help you get your show listed in every major podcast platform. They're going to get you a great-looking website, audio players that you can drop into other websites, detailed analytics to see how people are listening, and tools to promote your episodes, and a lot more. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners, and the team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Join over 100,000 podcasters like me already using Buzzsprout to get their message out to the world. Following the link in the show notes lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you, and when you sign up using that link, you're going to get a $20 Amazon gift card. Go ahead and create something great today with Buzzsprout. All right, let's get into this week's show. Well, if you're a fan of The Office, you know Paul Lieberstein, Toby. But beyond that great character, Paul was a writer and ultimately executive producer and showrunner of The Office, and was a writer and producer on many other great shows like King of the Hill, The Drew Carey Show, and The Newsroom. And in 2018, he wrote, directed, and starred in the feature film Song of Back and Neck. I talked to Paul about making that movie, talked to him about how he got his start in television, going from Hamilton College to becoming an Emmy Award winner. I was interested to talk to Paul to try and get a peek behind the curtain. You know, we watch shows like The Office and rarely think about all the work that goes on behind the scenes to make a show happen. And it was fun to be able to get some of that insight from Paul in this conversation. He's a really nice guy, and as he points out in the conversation, a very patient man. And he demonstrated that patience in putting up with my questions. So sit back and enjoy my conversation with an Emmy winner. I got to talk to an Emmy winner. How cool is that? Emmy Award winner Paul Lieberstein, class of 1989. How's it going for you? How are you living through these crazy times?
It's gone okay. Yeah. No different. It's the same story.
Right.
It's the same 5 minutes of every podcast.
Right. Are you? How is it impacting your work?
It's just really, really hard to get work done.
Is that right?
Is the thing. Yeah, it's as busy as ever. It's just combination of summer and no camps and no school for the fall, and it's just how do we figure out how I work all day?
Right.
But
I had Dave Bouliare on from CAA, and I was asking him what this pandemic was doing to production, and he had indicated a few months ago that productions were ramping up. Are you seeing any kind of slowdown or?
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's talking about. Or you know what? I mean, maybe there was talk of a ramp up, and then LA and California just got decimated. We had a full on resurgence, and it's become one of the worst in the country. So nothing's happening. And then I don't really want to be part of the first wave.
Right.
Let some other people figure that out.
Right.
I'm not dying to get into production.
Yeah. Does that make time for writing when the kids and family aren't distracting you?
There's a lot of writing to do. So it's a lot. I mean, to get a few hours a day is a huge win.
Yeah.
And that's not enough.
I know. Anyone I talk to is, even just like, oh, it'd be nice to be able to take this opportunity to read. And who the hell has time to read or do anything when it's, you're full bore constantly with family and responsibility. And
I mean, there's I have friends with kids of all different ages, and some of them, it's fantastic. They really are getting a chance to dive into stuff and reading, and then some with some older kids who have come back home are get this unique opportunity to be with them again.
Yeah, that's true.
In a way that was just they were gone. Right. They weren't ever going to live at home again. And
right.
So it's a lot of things for a lot of people. But for the people who happen to have someone, a kid who's between 3 and 7 or 8, it hit really hard.
You said it, brother. You said it. I have a neighbor who had college and post-college age kids, and the one post-college came home, moved back home for a time from New York City with a boyfriend in tow. and it was, not so suddenly the amount of kids grew,
Yeah.
So I had a classmate of yours on recently. I talked to Guy Bear.
Oh,
89er. Yeah.
I haven't talked to him since college. We exchanged kind of emails a few years ago.
Yeah. He's a good guy. It was a good chat.
Charity thing.
How did you end up at Hamilton?
So I grew up in Connecticut. So, I thought I was pretty sure I wanted just a small liberal arts college. And I can't truly recall why I wanted that. Why not go to a city in hindsight?
Right.
But I thought it just felt very manageable to me. And I don't really know how we were evaluating the different colleges. You have reputation plus a vibe you get when you visit. That's it. And I just visited on this beautiful day. It was snowing. Campus was amazing.
Yeah. If you have a certain idea of what college is supposed to be like, that campus can check that box for you pretty quickly.
Yes, it really can. Yeah. If you're going off a picture, trying to match it.
That's right. And then you spend time there and you realize, oh wait, this snow never goes away. And then what was your experience like in the mid to late 80s?
I had a pretty good time there. I had a pretty good time at Hamilton. I enjoyed it. A lot of friends. God, I don't think it was, I had some kind of unique experience there. Every once in a while there's someone who really doesn't like it or doesn't quite fit, transfers away, wants a bigger, more going on, or college isn't for them. But that was the outlier there, I think everyone was just basically having a nice time.
Yeah. It was a little different. I've talked about this before. A decade later, it was different because we were going through a transitional phase with the fraternity houses when I was there.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm always interested to talk to folks who were there pre that decision to take away the houses. And
I thought that was an excellent decision.
Yeah,
I loved that decision. I did join a frat, but I didn't really know what I was getting into and what it was going to be like, and just seeing how I think the ultimate effect of it was more isolating than bonding. I really liked who I met there, but I think I could have also been friends with them without this artificial, boundary. And it also had this effect of kind of helping separate the campus, and the fraternities weren't had a lot of very old, kind of conservative ideas about the other side of the campus. And that's just kind of ridiculous. And I didn't share it. I just didn't share that view. So I found myself out of step with the fraternity a lot of times.
Yeah, I think the idea that you have your meals in the house and you spend all this time with just a select group of people on a campus that small, to limit it even more just seems like you really
it's really ridiculous. And the other thing that happened, which I really didn't expect, and I probably wouldn't have joined had I known this, is that I didn't really understand. I didn't suspect that all my friends I was going to become distant with when they joined different fraternities. There was just a less of an interest in really considering this person maybe a close friend anymore,
Yeah.
Going around and I don't know. I thought it was odd, but I think it's much better without it. I think the school's getting better and better.
Oh yeah, that's anyone I talk to, the consistent comments are it's more diverse student. The quality of student is far superior than it was in the 80s and 90s, which I believe wholeheartedly. I was lucky to get in when I did. I know I wouldn't get in now. This notion of what the change happened, with taking away the houses really opened it up and made people more, integrated the campus far more than I think it had been, in your experience, I think. And
it really needed it. Yeah. it was like we had this like little red state, blue state thing going on.
Yeah.
In this tiny campus.
Right. 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 And that was the thing that always struck me. And I don't know what it was like for you, but I ended up not joining a fraternity because I felt like in a school this small, if they're going to have good parties, they need to invite people that aren't in the fraternity anyway. So
well, that was good thinking.
I generally got invited to all of them anyway. So, and then, and I know you've talked about this before, but economics major, not what you'd expect for someone who does what you do for a living now. Was what you do now the plan all along, or how did that come about?
I didn't really know that this was possible. I didn't know this was an industry.
Uh-huh.
I didn't know that people made a lot of money writing TV. That like I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
So I was caught up in the whole '80s, Gordon Gekko thing. Pretty much everyone else, but I wasn't suited to it, and so it quickly, after getting a job, kind of in it or in it adjacent, it became very clear that I was in the wrong place, mm-hmm. and I immediately went back to writing, which is something I loved in high school. Did very little of it in college, but was drawn to it. Just immediately started taking classes again. Tried to get on some shows, tried to get on Sesame Street, didn't work out, but I just knew so little about it.
So it's interesting to hear you say that writing wasn't a big part of your college experience, because I think the natural assumption is, oh, he's a writer. Hamilton is very writing intensive. Everyone talks about the writing at Hamilton. So I'm surprised to hear you say that didn't come from your experience at school.
Yeah, I didn't think writing was that huge at Hamilton, actually. Like it was bigger in my high school. There was more plays being written, more kind of respect for that, part of the school. Theater was bigger. It was definitely, it may have even changed by the time you got there.
Got it.
But it was, and then, outside of a creative writing class, maybe one creative writing class, I don't think I did anything. I just kind of put it all away for a while.
Wow. Yeah, that must have been a newer development as time went on. That's interesting. So what is it? Just writing spec scripts, trying to sell your work, or how is that working?
Did you even know what a spec? Did you even know
out of school?
Oh, right, out of school. Yeah, no, I didn't even know what a spec was.
Okay,
I learned. I took some classes at the new school and learned really quickly and wrote just a ton of them. And it took a while before I kind of really learned the craft, and finally wrote one that I think was responsible for my next 6 jobs.
And then you just pick up the lingo and you pick up the lingo and how things work as you go from job to job. I mean, there's a whole vocabulary and a whole.
Yeah. I didn't even know what to pick up at first. I was looking at other people's spec scripts and copying every little thing, every margin, every capitalized word, not knowing if that was important or not knowing what it was for. But there's a lot of very unimportant little things.
How do you find your style then as you're going through? Someone who didn't know what they were doing. I mean, you have ideas in your head, but it must take a while.
I was actually really grateful that it took me so long, and I wrote these 10 spec scripts and figured out a lot about who I was as a writer before I started writing on shows. I thought that was incredibly helpful.
Interesting. And was that advice you had gotten, or you just had no other choice?
No. It just took longer.
Okay.
But you write on a show, and the idea is to write in somebody else's voice. That right. while you're working it up, there's the person who created it, who's often the showrunner, and to be helpful is to write in their voices, to help them write the way they want to.
Mm-hmm. difficult then? I mean, because I know you've then since become a showrunner, and then where does the individual writer end and the showrunner begin, and vice versa? Like how it must be a unique sort of.
It is, and finding the right place, finding the right job is a huge part of it, because there could be two good writers with no overlap in style, mm-hmm. and it's just not going to work out. One of them can't help the other.
Uh-huh.
But to get on something where there's just a bigger overlap, and then you just kind of zero in and kind of concentrate on what you do that the show also does.
And is a writer's room made up of, well, we know that person's the joke person, that person is the story person, that person,
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Everybody's kind of got to do everything.
Gotcha.
Some people have some natural abilities that seem to be a little, better in certain areas.
Yeah. And does it take some guts to start pitching ideas and fear of getting shot down, or
in the room? Yeah. It really depends on who's running the room, but I have worked in rooms where it was, it was just ruled with terror. There was a show, The Naked Truth, which Chris Thompson, who's now dead, I think he had an overdose, but he was a troubled man, and he ran this room with just instilling fear in everybody. And it fired there was so much turnover.
Yes.
I was only one of two people that year who weren't, two writers who weren't fired. And he would do a thing. He would be like in a bad mood in the morning, go to set, fire someone, and come back in a good mood.
Jeez.
It was just rough. But you can have I've had other very nurturing, mm-hmm. showrunners where you feel very confident,
uh-huh.
Right away.
And what's your style as a showrunner?
Pretty nurturing. Yeah.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
That was
learn your lesson, right? Anyone who has a bad boss learns how not to be a boss. Right?
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
But I was on a lot of shows,
uh-huh.
So I was able to kind of pick out what I liked and what didn't work. Well,
yeah. Is the experience you had prior to doing what you do now, becoming a writer, working in finance, did that inform any of your writing on The Office, of what it's like to be in an office? Because I feel like you need that experience to be able to write that authentically. And it always felt like there were some authentic moments in that show that you'd only know if you actually worked in an office setting.
Definitely. I think I used every little thing that happened to me in my short tenure in offices. But at the same time, I thought The Office it also was like any kind of group like that.
Sure.
Like a high school classroom felt very similar. With
sure.
Just this random person in charge who's often not very good at, managing, and you're mixed up with random people, who you didn't choose.
Yeah.
So I thought, it was mostly an interpersonal show, and I think a lot of experiences from everywhere were able to inform it. Yeah.
Yeah. I lived in LA for a couple of years, about 5 years ago. And just so happened I had neighbors who, were members of Working Hollywood. One was a TV writer, and one did a lot of directing for television. And the writer, as I understood it, had an early success on a very popular, successful show about a group of friends. And then the writer strike hit, and work dried up, started doing work on reality TV, and then was constantly chasing, hopefully, the next big break, working on this script, and maybe Tom Hanks is going to pick it up for HBO. Maybe this one's going to pick it up. And I think it was the first view I had of real working Hollywood, and everyone has this perception of, oh, if you work in Hollywood, it's amazing, and you're just out at parties, and you're a celebrity, and all that sort of stuff. But the amount of people who are just grinding every day, trying to get that break, is far bigger than people realize, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, it took me 2 years to get my first job.
Yeah,
and then I had that, and then there was probably a year, a big gap before the next one.
Yeah.
But after a while, you meet enough people, and you work with other people, and your reputation builds, and then it's not so hard. I had for the longest time, it drove me nuts. I had this pit in my stomach all the time, not knowing how this was ever going to work, how I was ever going to, and then, I was just, although I loved writing, I just didn't have the constitution for someone who's just didn't know what his job was, I was actually very attracted to this, this accountant lifestyle where you're just, your job, and you have this great security, and you invest only in mutual funds, and, but it's just not where my, heart was in vocation was. And then after a while, it just kind of dried up, and it was like, okay, I'm going to get another job, and I just kind of recognized that's the thing. My whole life, these jobs are going to come and go. There isn't this. Yeah, I got it now.
I imagine, the office buys you some security, at least opens doors to have work considered. But is the flip side of that true also, that everyone's expecting the next office and not an evolution of your work?
I think more as an actor, I just get approached for when they want something very, very close to the character I played, to Toby. But as a writer, I feel like there's I have a lot more. There's a lot more breadth in the expectation.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
And is that still is writing still more the passion than acting? I know acting was. I've heard you talk about before. It was a requirement of the writing job is to act, and then it just evolved from there. So is writing still the first love?
Yes, it is. I really like acting. I think it's really fun.
And you're quite good at it too, by the way.
Hey, thanks. But what it takes to be an actor is what I was talking about before about, being out of work, that's it for an actor. Yeah. Forget, at least as a writer, I tend to find something that can last a few years, not always, but, an actor, it's just, I only had one or two auditions in my life after that. And one of them, I just kind of learned the amount of time that I had to prep for it was like, I had to take a day beforehand and really do it. And then like that whole day of just going there and waiting and being part of it, it just felt like that's it. That's your life. And I'd be in a room with like really good comedy people, all waiting, all auditioning. And this is what they do. Yeah. And so I couldn't write really if I was doing that. I just had to say, no, I'm just not going to audition. If something comes my way, I'll do it. But
and the resolve you need to put up with getting bad news over and over and over again and being told no over and over and over again, right? That becomes part of the job if you're on that audition circuit.
Yeah. I think experienced actors they don't think anything of that.
Yeah. Takes a special kind of person. In terms of the writing, you mentioned picking things up along the way. When you moved to work on the newsroom, and working with Aaron Sorkin, he's a whole other, like, there's like the Aaron Sorkin school versus the others. Are you picking things up from how he works?
Oh yeah. That was a class.
Yeah.
He has a way of doing things that's really very, very interesting. And, I was able to at least a few elements of it, I've taken away from that.
Like what? I know I've heard him talk about the musicality of his writing, and right there's a rhythm to it that that feels very Sorkin. A lot of people try to imitate it, and it's not nearly as good. But what are the things you picked up from him?
No, I didn't. What I got from him was is this kind of the value of research, putting research into a scene and finding the language that's real, and how that can make a scene just really pop. And the language itself, adds these concepts behind it that really can make a scene a lot more interesting. And the other thing he did was he liked to put two experts against each other in any little thing. So if it was like, Post-its, he would try to find like the two most expert on Post-its in the world that have differing opinions, and figure out where that was. And if that was in the glue, the type of glue, then they would know everything about that type of glue. And neither of them was in the Post-it business or should know anything about that. But when it came time to that part of the scene, that he could have an interested, like somewhere in the world, there's two experts in Post-its who could have at least 1 minute of very interesting conversation debating an aspect of it. And that's what he would try to like weave into his scene.
Yeah. I'll tell you, I just went back and watched your scene from the newsroom at the desk with Jeff Daniels when you're the EPA, and man, he gave you a mouthful and some of the,
He sure did. It was so hard. I hammered away. And then on the Sorkin set, there is and I don't know if this was Sorkin or Jeff Daniels, because I didn't get there till season 3, so I'm not sure. But you knew what you're going to say in rehearsal. You came in and, on a normal show, I see a lot of people, with the scripts in hand at the first time they walking through, and it is the first time they are reading the scene, maybe since they've read the script in the first, a while ago. And then they kind of get to know their part as they're rehearsing, and on most sets have it by take one, but sometimes it takes a few takes to really nail it. In the Sorkin set, you knew exactly what you were going to do before you ever set foot on.
And that was expected. That was known and expected.
That was kind of understood. And I don't know why, but so I had to just hammer away at that, and that is not something I was used to doing.
It was great. I mean, obviously a different style of speech and a different style of working than I think some of the other work you've been in, and especially across from Jeff Daniels, who seems born to act in Aaron Sorkin's work, and just firing away at you on that. And you had to, the way you were playing it, of just cool and calm and, well, we're all screwed, and it was great. It was I loved it when I saw it, and then thinking about it, preparing for this, watching it back again, I was like, wow, that's great.
Yeah, that came out of just a bit we were doing in the writer's room, where I just had this sense of like, it's too late. As we started researching it, I was like, wait a second, it's too late. We blew it.
That would have been great 20 years ago.
Yeah.
As an actor, saying someone else's words, and sometimes, are you ever saying like, this is crap, or I could have written this better, or they should have done it this way, or is it hard to compartmentalize the different roles?
I do say that sometimes, but there's a flip side of it too, that if I just say the words over and over and I like really learn them, sometimes I start to like figure out what the writer really meant. Sometimes every once in a while something's just a bad line, but depending on the type of set, certainly if it's a comedy set, you can work with that. and work with the people around and change it. Right. But there's also like I think a lot of actors can bail on lines too quickly.
And,
you know, I think it's important to really give the dialogue a shot. So like, to really learn it, try to figure it out. And I found that when I've done that, most of the time, I don't need to change it after that.
Gotcha. And then as a writer, and you have someone like Steve Carell, who's obviously a genius, but I imagine he doesn't stay on script for far too long. Is there a frustration of, dude, just say what I wrote?
No, it's never a frustration.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Not for him anyway, I guess.
No, you know, there was quite a bit of improvising in the beginning of The Office, and then I think they kind of noticed that we weren't maybe using a lot of it, and there was less as we went on.
Yeah.
And I think what it is like, you know, I've talked about this with other writers. The written line, you know, they might find a better joke on set, but the joke that we wrote also advances the story and sets up this other line.
I see.
Down the road and adds a piece of information. And so it's not so easy to just change it like on the fly. I mean, you can find something maybe a little more honest to say, or you can find something that's a little funnier.
Sure.
But sometimes they just went off, and you know, like sometimes there's just something called a blow, just at the end of the scene. You're just kind of writing a joke, you know, or something. Like
See how it works, sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, or there's a little diversion in the scene where everybody knows this is just a little comedy diversion, you know, and then the improvising could really come into play. And Steve, you know, there's times where we were working on something for half an hour in the room, and then he would improvise something that's just funnier.
Does that piss you off?
Just be grateful. Be grateful. No, everyone looks better when this show's better.
Yeah, that's true. Do you get tired of being Toby? Do you get it on the street? Do you get it where you go places? It's going to follow you forever, right?
Yeah, it'll probably follow me forever.
Yeah.
I got really sick of it for a while, and then there was a lot less of it for a little bit, and then there was a lot more of it as like the show went Netflix crazy.
Yeah.
And now I don't know what's going to happen because show's moving over to Peacock.
Yeah,
the streaming service.
Yeah,
which I think is not international and will not have.
Just doesn't have the distribution. It's going to take a lot longer, and all these new streaming services that are trying to get built up, it's
yeah. So I think we're going to the show will probably leave the zeitgeist for a while. Is my guess.
And then there'll be a reunion, some sort of special or something, and it'll pick back up.
I don't know.
Can we talk about your movie, Song of Back in Neck?
Yeah.
So good.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, I loved it. It was, it's unfortunate that those types of movies just aren't as prevalent as they were. I mean, I think they are prevalent. It's just they don't get the audiences that they used to. Right?
They just disappear.
I mean, my wife and I watched it, and I looked at her and I said that we used to live in Brooklyn. I said that's a movie we would have gone to see at the BAM, back in the days of independent movies when you could see the movie theater. So one of the things I'm interested in, I want to get into the bits about the movie, but went back and looked at you doing press, right? So for this was you, right? Write, direct, star. This was your movie.
Yep.
Therefore, you were out front and center and doing all the press. Do you hate that? I mean, I will preface this question by saying I recognize that I'm asking you questions, so I'm making you do the thing I'm asking about. But I saw videos of you at the film festival.
Just gotta look uncomfortable.
No. In fact, I wrote the note of, wow, he's just the patience on this guy, because the same questions over and over again, even in the same interview, the same questions over and over again. And you kept finding new ways to answer the question and be gracious, and that's got to be grating.
It definitely is the most the least attractive part of the whole thing. Yeah. I mean, that's like when you're hiring an actor, you have to put in their contract the press that they'll do down to the hour. How many hours they'll go this, because if it's not in the contract, nobody will do it.
No one's gonna do it. Yeah. But I imagine this you had no choice because it's your movie, and if you don't do it,
And I was like, God, I see the benefit of having a different lead who could go out and do this for me. No, and in a way, that's like the whole thing about getting a star. You can get all this promotion.
Right. There's a built-in audience right away. Yeah. I've heard you talk about that it took a while to get this movie made. Do you feel like this movie has opened up doors for you to do this type of work, more of this type of work?
Well, that is the thing that like makes me so angry.
Oh no,
it hasn't. It
really
hasn't, and I don't know why. Maybe because nobody saw it. It just kind of, was released online, and in a year where the kind of independent market was kind of crumbling.
Yeah.
So we like started to make this, and there was a different market. When I began this process, there was like a very viable independent market. And that all just, for reasons I don't really understand, just fell away.
How long did it take you how long was the process of making it?
It was a couple of years to get someone interested. And then it took about another year and a half. I've been like 4 years,
wow.
all in planning.
Wow. What's that moment like? 4 years of your life into that movie, and it's on many levels a personal movie. I know it veers off of your personal life. To the first time you see it out in the world, is that a good feeling? Is that a nervous feeling? What's going through?
Oh yeah. The whole thing made me so nervous. But I'd love to do it again because I feel like I've learned so much.
You enjoyed the process of doing it all and being the guy?
There was definitely a lot I enjoyed about it.
Yeah.
And I like directing a film. I like figuring out visual storytelling and framing, and I think all that is really fun. And to do it in conjunction with writing, to some things get words and some things get images, and to be able to really
control both.
To control both is like fully telling a story, and I really like it.
Well, I think in that movie, the way the opening sequence is shot, you made some very specific choices of how, reaching up to the refrigerator, and certainly how you eating the cereal and how you get out of the bed. I mean, and that's shot in a very specific way that tells the story in an uncomfortable way. Even there was one that really stuck with me, and it was after your character crashes on the rollerblades, and then you're in the living room sitting on the floor, and she's offering you drugs, and then she pours you a drink. And then you two are talking, and then she gets up, and you keep the camera low, and she walks in, pours herself a drink, and then the camera fixates on the heavy pour that she had poured for herself.
Yeah.
And I thought that was an interesting choice of, okay, it signaled like, all right, this is going places, But that's part of the storytelling, which I thought was great.
Yeah. Thank you.
And the back to your acting, the physicality in that role, certainly the hunched over, like the back pain, you have to signal back pain, but there were there were more subtle things about the physicality of your performance that were funny, right? The going into the office with the walker and trying to decide where to put it, and like those sorts of decisions really added to the comedy in real subtle ways. But I thought it was brilliant. It was really brilliant. I'm just gonna fan out about this movie.
I love
it. I've heard you talk about that stemmed from your dealing with anger or lack of anger. 2 years later, are you free of back? Or 2 years, right? 2 years later, are you free of back pain, and are you dealing with anger better?
I am doing both. Yeah, I am free of back pain.
Good.
And I am much better at anger, I think.
Well, I was waiting for it.
It depends who you ask. Yeah.
I was going to to say, in that bad interview I watched of them, the guy asking you questions and you were so patient. I was like, get mad. Come on. You said you want to get mad now. Get mad at this guy.
I am a very patient person.
That's good.
That is, I don't know. I am excessively patient. To a fault.
So you want to do more of writing and directing. What's the difference for those who don't know? I think people have a general sense of what a director does for movies, and the translation to television, it's a completely different experience, right? Because you're coming in to an existing story, an existing product. There's a style, but then different directors come in and bring their own elements. So, like, how does that work in television?
Well, when a show's just starting out, there's a lot to do, and you come in and you still work with the actors on their characters, and you're still helping them through maybe a scene if they don't really understand why they're doing something or can't feel it or still explore new aspects of the character, and that's all really interesting. And then visually, you might be on some existing sets that haven't been, like shot to death, and you can find a new angle and a new way of kind of visually telling the scene. And there's some stuff to do, but once the show's really up and going, second season on, I find it very uninteresting to direct, and I've stopped doing that. It's you're coming into a show where you know it the least. So every actor knows their character better than you.
Right.
The wardrobe knows what they should be wearing better than you. The director of photography knows how to shoot it better than you. There's an established visual style that they're using already, and there is very little for the director to really do, and it could almost be a directorless experience. Where a director can kind of really help sometimes is comedy, and sometimes framing for comedy can be a very subtle thing, and helping actors with comedy can be very interesting. And I haven't really worked on too many dramas to know what that's all about. But they must. Well, it's interesting. I mean, some shows, the director probably really doesn't solve all that much. Sometimes there's a story element that can be solved through directing. I mean, there's some stuff to do where a director can really improve it, and then a conductor could make it a little bit worse as well. Maybe not get it completely, or just be kind of maybe uninspired in the shots they choose. But even then, the director of photography for an existing show should be catching that.
Right. Right.
And they generally if the shows are shows where they cover traditionally and and then do close-ups, come in for close, the director of photography knows all of that, and if someone's going to tell the director, okay, no, we're not moving on yet, you need to do your close-ups.
I see. Yeah.
So I don't know. There's little things you can do, but for me, it's not enough to make it really super worthwhile.
So what is worthwhile? What's next? Can you say what you're working on?
Directing a movie is an incredible thing where you have to make every single choice.
Yeah.
But I'm working on two things. I have a new remote office comedy, like a virtual workplace show that I just sold.
Congratulations.
So I'm working on that. Thank you. And that getting ready to record an audio series for Audible.
Nice.
That I've been working on a while too. That's very fun. It's a space comedy, but kind of very anti-sci-fi in a way. It's okay. It'll be 4 to 5 hours of material, but there isn't a single mission. It's kind of just like hanging out in space and chasing women and killing time.
That's awesome.
And following a captain who really kind of fell into it and doesn't have any real desire to be a captain.
Nice.
So
well, that's good.
It's fun. I'm really excited about that.
And those both feel like, regardless of what the future holds, there are ways to get those things done in a pandemic, right? I mean, you can.
yeah. There's a world. Yeah, certainly the Audible one,
right?
But the remote one as well. Actually, we could get up in a pandemic.
Well, that's exciting. Lots of material there. Very relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So back to Hamilton. If you went back and thought, you arriving on that snowy day, is there anything you wish you had known? Now looking back,
you know what, I feel it's like at the time I felt like this is the time to be with friends, right? And that was the social aspect of college really was very strong appeal. So, but what I think I didn't know is how easy it is to be with friends, and I'm going to be with friends my whole life. And what I don't get to do is learn anything anymore. Yeah. Like, I miss learning. I miss it so much. I miss putting new ideas in my head. It's so hard to find the time even to do some little, class online or something, listen to a lecture. It just barely happens. I wish I was like put more into that.
Yeah.
I wish I spent more time as a student, really digging in. And the idea to, like, even if you can learn something a little bit now, the idea of becoming an expert, it's like, learning everything about something, it's almost impossible now.
I got to be honest. Going into this conversation, I fully expected the story to be, I loved writing. I wrote all through college. I knew what I wanted to be, and that's how I got into writing for television. To hear that, no, he was an economics major, didn't know the first thing about writing for television, and didn't even write that much at Hamilton, really just caught me off guard. Nonetheless, he ended up where he was supposed to be. Thank goodness he pursued his passion and ended up delivering some great entertainment for us. He's a great guy, great conversation. Immensely thankful to have had the opportunity to talk to him. Again, he's an Emmy winner. I was talking to an Emmy winner. How cool is that? My thanks to Paul Lieberstein. Best of luck to him on the two projects he mentioned. I'll certainly be checking those out and be excited to see those. And if you haven't seen Song of Back and Neck, I can't recommend it enough. He was great in it. The entire movie is fantastic. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can go watch it for free right now on Amazon. And if you're not a Prime member, shell out the few bucks and rent it. It's well worth the money and time investment to see Paul's work. See a fellow Hamilton grad's work. 4 years of his life put into that work. Go check it out. And then let me know what you think. Hit us up on social media, Had I Known Show. Email us at hadiknownshow@gmail.com. Again, hadiknownshow@gmail.com. Let us know what you think of Song of Back and Neck. You have been listening to Had I Known on WHCL-FM, Clinton, New York. hadiknown.buzzsprout.com. My thanks, as always, to Dr. Michael Woods for supplying the music on this show. And, as always, Doc is going to play us out. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll talk to you next week.
Had I Known podcast show on your radio or take it to go.
That was good. You want to try it again?
Yep.
Okay.
Why are we doing it again?